Hello, my name is Harrison Perrin. Start off by saying Happy Easter. Easter is a time where a lot of parents are having fun with their kids, finding Easter eggs, and celebrating. Um, and I'd like to just take a little time here to talk about a loss that I guess a lot of parents who've experienced it could be reminded of at this time of year, and that's the loss of parental rights. In particular, being a heartbreaking result of substance use disorder. I do have some sort of personal experience with this. I am from Ohio originally. I was not married to the mother of my children. And in Ohio, currently, you don't get any automatically granted rights as a father. You have to go to court for it. So, being someone with substance use disorders myself, I kind of got to go through that loss experience to a degree. But I was interested in what it felt like for people that uh, had no chance to regain those rights or had little chance to regain those rights, and what kind of loss experience that is. So here's the facts. From 2000 to 2017, 5 million children were removed from their parents' care, and 1.2 million of those was due to parental drug use or chronic inability to properly parent, as allocated by the state. In 2000, 15% of those 5 million were due to parental drug use. And in 2017, that more than doubled up to 37%. So it is a real problem, a really prominent problem. And let's just look at some of the grounds for termination that can cause this experience of loss. Long-term drug-induced incapacity of the parent, which resulting in chronic neglect or abuse, or not. It can just be that it is deemed that the parent has, been in drug-induced incapacity for a long enough period of time. If the child is placed in foster care of any kind, and 22 months pass, if 15 of those most recent 22 months the child has remained in foster care, then that is grounds for termination of parental rights. If the parent has failed to correct a condition, such as substance use disorder, in the properly allotted amount of time, then those rights can be terminated as well. And a really jarring fact is that currently only 22 states have the option of flipping that decision and giving the parent a chance to change those circumstances. So a lot of these parents are stuck experiencing this loss and going into the grieving process. And what I found through my research about this type of loss is that it is it's an ambiguous loss because the child is still alive, but not present in the life of the person experiencing the loss and grieving. And it's a disenfranchised grief, which is really terrible. Um, a lot of these parents, they carry guilt. They feel like a failure. Their feelings are not validated by society. So there's a lot of secrecy, a lot of denial. They are labeled by themselves and others as inadequate. Um, they feel unentitled to grieve. This grief can last much longer when it's disenfranchised like this. And there really is no normal, formal grieving process for someone losing their children to adoption in general. There just isn't. There's a lot of love and sympathy and empathy given out for parents that have lost children to death. Um, but when a child is lost because their custody is taken from you, there's just not a lot of sympathy from society. And that can make it really hard on these parents and can make this a drawn out process. Um, Researchers Kinney, Barrington, and Green interviewed a lot of mothers in particular who had experienced this type of loss from substance use disorder, resulting in loss of parental rights. And they came up with um, what is really four parts, not necessarily in any order, um, but beginning with the separation, it always will. So, separation meaning that's the phase when the parental rights are initially severed. Then there is the suffering, which is the beginning of the grieving process. They're going through a lot of pain. Then this battle between forgetting and remembrance, and which one is going to be more effective for them. And then it comes to just survival. Uh, and because this is kind of seen by Kenny, Barrington, and Green as a grief that maybe you just can't really get through or get over, but you just have to learn to survive. So here are some quotes from the research of Kenny and Associates there, from some of the women that they interviewed, and they were just really powerful. You can take a look at that there. It's just a lot of professing that they're just lost. Um, they don't have hope. They don't know who they are. They feel like nothing, feel empty. It can result in suicidality and a lot of self harm. There was a lot of testimony of falling deeper into addiction, of cutting, of suicide attempts. And one of the common denominators, maybe the most prominent common denominator for all of the suffering process that they found in this research was the high level of trauma and PTSD. The next big piece of this is this forgetting and remembrance phase or stage. And there's another quote at the top there. It's like that doesn't go away. No drugs or alcohol can put it away. And that's one from one of the testimonies in the research from Kenny Barrington and Green. There's a lot of attempts to numb and detach in this back and forth between forgetting and remembrance. And for these women in this study, it was all to do with substance abuse, sometimes relationships that they shouldn't be in, putting themselves in harm's way, the self sabotaging, giving up hope entirely, a loss of care for self. And it can really just go take them into a darker hole. And then there's surviving. And it's for some, it's hanging on to hope. That can be a good thing, it can be a bad thing if there is no hope. A lot of these women said that they didn't even necessarily feel like they were surviving doing it that way. Some women doing things like making birthday cards, getting Christmas presents and wrapping them and saving them for maybe one day when the child reaches adulthood and that they might have a chance at reunification. Some of the women said that they were avoiding having any more children. And some of the women seem to take the approach of self improvement, a lot of them going back to school, focusing on the substance use disorder first, of course, and doing things that they do have power over. And there's chronic consequences from this kind of grief, from this type of loss, low self esteem, depression, even physical illnesses. As I mentioned before, succumbing to that substance use disorder, problems with new relationships, unable to grieve properly or healthily in whatever way they might in any future losses, and a tendency to isolate. And many parents report that those symptoms actually increase over time instead of decrease. So Jansen and Melrose, and their research that was quite similar to Kenny and Barrington and Green's, where they interviewed a lot of different women, but more from like a dramatical approach, like asking the women to write some poetry, things like that, to kind of express how they're feeling. They came up with this ending to this grief, or a resolution to this grief, I should say, called Reclamation. And it consists of three parts in no particular order: learning how to live in this new world without their children, a lot of imagery, as in imagining the perfect day spent with their child, and ways of reaching toward the future, like I talked about before with some of the women on working on things that they do have power over, like self improvement, or making things set up as best they can for if one day they are reunited with the child. Strength based perspectives are really good for parents grieving like this. Feeling like they're being heard. Social support is huge. Renegotiating of the role as mother or as father, and finding meaning in whatever unique and personal way they can. A relationship with a higher power was a big common denominator in these parents that were able to reach this reclamation, and accepting accountability, which can be difficult, but owning their part in what happened actually ended up helping them heal. And I want to thank my family members for taking some of these photographs and for participating in some of these photographs that I've used here. And the drawing that was shown earlier was a drawing that I did as part of my grief process as well. Thank you very much.